On this episode of the Low Carb Cook, buns, baps, rolls, it's bread time again, and today we're making some soft top brown bread roll goodness. Welcome to another in my bread series on the Low Carb Cook. In this edition, we're going to rustle up a batch of delicious, basic, soft brown bread sandwich rolls that are just perfect for the lunchbox or a quick bite at home anytime. In this edition, we'll be making them using a stand mixer and then baking them in the oven ourselves. But you can follow part of my brown bread maker episode, link in the description below, to let that machine do the first part of the job if you prefer. But today, we're going to be doing things a little bit more manually. We'll be using my trusty stand mixer to do the hard work, but you can always mix and knead the dough by hand if you don't have one. But this machine will make very light work of that job. Now, this base recipe was first published on Deirdre's Kitchen and then made really popular by the Keto King, two other channels you should absolutely be watching alongside this one. Today though, we'll be making this as 12 mid-size rolls. So let's see what we need. So to start this recipe, we're going to use 50 grams of oat fibre, 240 grams of vital wheat gluten, then I have 90 grams of ground flaxseed. That gives it that wholemeal taste and feeling. We've got 2 eggs, 40 grams of powdered erythritol, just to sweeten it up a little bit, half a teaspoon of xanthan gum, a pinch of pink Himalayan salt, 40 grams of salted softened butter, that wants to be at room temperature. Then we're going to use just a teaspoon of honey, that's just to feed the yeast, so that's all going to get consumed, that won't leave any carbs in there. And finally, our yeast pack. I'm using the instant dried yeast packs. These work much better than anything I've tried out of a jar. They're 7 grams each, available from any supermarket, ideal. And then finally, we have 250 ml or 1 cup of lukewarm water. This is around 30 degrees centigrade. So as with all of my manual bread recipes, I'm going to start by placing a pan of water in the bottom of my oven, just to get a nice steamy warm environment. So I've pre-boiled my kettle and I'm putting about 1 inch of water into my tray there. And then we just push that back in, and I'm going to turn the oven up to its lowest setting, which is only 50 degrees, just to create that lovely steam bath that's really going to help this bread rise later on. Now, first things first, I'm going to sieve a lot of my dry ingredients. There's no point sieving the flaxseed, so that can go straight in. But I'm going to put my oat fibre, my vital wheat gluten, and my powdered erythritol, and xanthan gum, and my pink Himalayan salt. We'll just put all that through there. That's going to help aerate this before it even gets into the mixer. And of course, take out any nasty big lumps. Sometimes in the erythritol, you do get big lumps in there. There, that's perfect. Okay, move that aside. Now the next thing I'm going to do, just to help blend that through to start with, just with a whisk, stir all those ingredients together in this bowl. And that just helps the machine get everything together nicely when it really goes to mix it. So okay, next step. It's quite important the layer that we put this, because we don't want the water to meet the yeast until it's really getting ready to mix. It's going to activate the yeast and we don't want it to start creating all that gas straight away. So I'm going to put my lukewarm water. Now remember, that's around 30 degrees centigrade. We don't want it to be too hot because we don't want to damage the yeast. Next, I'm going to crack my 2 eggs into there. Number 1, no shell. Number 2, no shell. What we like. And then I have a fork. I'm just going to quickly whisk that up a bit and break those egg yolks up. There. Now on top of that, I'm going to add our dry mixture. I'll go in this way. And I'm going to create a bit of a well in the top of that dry mixture. And that's when I'm going to add my packet of yeast. There we go. Sprinkle that in. Then I'm going to add my butter pieces just around the edges of that. Now normally if I'm making this in a bread maker, I don't bother to weigh this out. I just use my eyes with a teaspoon, grab it straight out of the butter dish and put it in, and that tends to work just fine. Then this is my 1 teaspoon of honey just to feed that yeast. Little tip for you, if your honey has been crystallized in the jar and isn't soft and you can't spoon it out, just put the jar into a pan of water and warm that up gradually, and you'll find that this will turn back into nice runny honey. So there we go, we'll drizzle 1 spoon over there. That's that. And then we'll close that down. And we're going to turn it on a fairly low setting, just say 3 on my mixer. We'll have a quick clear up while it's kneading that. That's going to want to stay in there for about 8 to 10 minutes. So we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to the Low Carb Cook. Now our dough has been kneading very nicely in the mixer there for about 10 minutes. We'll pull that out of there. There we go. Now you can see straight away that all that gluten is activated. It's incredibly stretchy and we're going to get that wonderful natural bread feel. Now I'm just going to fold that over itself to sort of create a bit of a nice skin on the top. And I'm going to bring back my bowl that I used earlier on for mixing it, and we're just going to spray around that with some coconut oil so this won't stick to it. I'm going to place that in. Now I've got a nice clean tea towel here that I've already got nice and wet. We're going to cover that with our nice moist cloth. That's ready to go into our oven to rise for about an hour now, and while we're doing that, you can have a look at the macros. So that's been in there rising now for an hour. Let's take that out and see how that's doing. Beep, beep. There we go, take that out. This is always the exciting time when you see just how well this is risen. So ready for the big reveal. Wow, that's amazing. Look at that, absolutely sensational. So the next thing we're going to do is take this out and we're going to knock it back. We're going to take all the air out of it again. And that just basically means kneading it. Now you can use any method you really want to. I'm just using your traditional pull and push and turning as we go. That's going to lead to our final bread having a much finer gluten structure, and that just means better bread for you at the end of the day. This just wants a couple of minutes of kneading. If you've still got your machine set up, you can still pop this back into the machine if you really want to. But again, if you're using my tip, if you're using a bread maker, all of this is going to be done for you, and you're just going to take it out right at the very end and divide it up. There, you can feel all the gases going from this now, and it's coming back down to what it was earlier, but it will all come back. You can see I don't even need any flour on my worktop to do this. There's still plenty of oil on that bread from earlier on. I love that you can see all of the texture in this, all that ground flaxseed there in the surface of it. There, that's at about 5 minutes of a second kneading there. Now we're going to bring in our weighing scales. And in grams, we'll weigh this out. There, that is literally 800 grams. So 800 grams divided by 12, that is 66 grams each. So we're going to divide this up into 66 gram segments or thereabouts. You could do this really roughly. I'm just using my bread cutter to divide that up. So that's 96, that's far too much. 58, 70, close enough. 56, 78. And don't worry if you're making small pieces, these will all bind back together. That's really not going to be an issue. 66, 56, 69, 68. That's 82. 66. 65. I'm getting good at this. 65. And that one, 64. So there we are, close enough. So now I'm going to bring in my 2 baking trays. You really shouldn't need to grease these at all, but the next stage is I'm going to roll these, squash them up, try and ball them up, and just roll them with my hand. There's a bit of a technique involved to this. Now these are going to rise again, and that means they're going to spread out again. So we're going to put 6 on each tray. We're going to leave them quite well spaced out. There you go, nice, neat. You can see going from shape 1 to shape 2, they look much better when they've been rolled out like that. You're sort of pinching as you go, you're creating this cup shape with your hand and pinching as you go to get these to form the right shape underneath your hand. You also got to create a bit of friction against the table. And again, you'll be surprised when these do their second rise that they will look so much bigger. Again, I'm squashing on the loose pieces to make sure they bind in and stick on. Of course, if you want smaller rolls, you can just turn this, divide it into 16. You can have 16 rolls or whatever you want. They'll be much smaller. And if you want larger rolls, again, you could just divide it into, say, 8 rolls and have even larger buns in there. There we go. Now, at some point in the future, I'm going to make a white bread roll version of these soft ones. You'll already find that we've got a sesame seed white bread roll recipe here on the channel. I'll put a link in that in the description below. Do check that one out. It's worth having a look at. They make great burger buns. There we are. Now I'm just going to let those rest for 5 minutes because I need to press them down, but it's really important just to give them 5 minutes to rest, and then we'll do that. We'll do that in just a second. So these have had 5 minutes to rest now, and that was just important before we squash them down. So with our 2 baking trays, all I'm going to do is squash each roll down with the palm of my hand, and they will pop back up. Now the next thing, to help these stay soft-topped, here in my sieve, I've got some vital wheat gluten and some lupin flour, and I am simply going to sprinkle this over the top of each roll. Now that's going to stop the oven from really baking out the top of it. This is one of the key things. It also makes them look more professional, but this is one of the key things to simply keeping your roll soft. Now we're going to pop those back into our warm oven. Make sure you turn it off. We're not ready to start baking these, but these will go back into the warm oven again for another hour to an hour and a half until they've really well risen, and then we will come back and have another look. Remember, turn the oven off. By the magic of television, that's it, they're done. An hour and a half rising there. Let's pull those out and take a look. There's our first set. There's our second set. And straight away, I'm going to turn our oven up to 180 degrees that we're going to bake these at. And just while we're waiting for that to come to temperature, we're going to dust these one more time with a bit more of the mixture that's lupin flour and vital wheat gluten, just to cover the bits that have raised really. And again, that's going to help keep these soft on top. This is also just going to cover up some of the cracks that have appeared in the top, and we just really want to protect those tops to keep these soft. There we go. So the oven's going to come up to temperature really quickly, so these can go straight back in now, but they're only going to go in for around 16 minutes because we really want to keep these soft. If they go in any longer, they'll come out a darker colour, but you really are going to trade off some of that softness and you'll end up with quite crunchy tops, and we don't really want that for our soft rolls. So pop in number 1, and then pop in number 2. We'll just set those up for 16 minutes. And we'll be right back. So those are baked now. Now halfway through that bake, I took them out, turned them round to make sure they've baked evenly, but there's our alarm. And we're ready to pull these out. Let's take a look. Wow. Well risen, rounded, looking fantastic. Let's bring out the second load. And there we are, absolutely wonderful. Now these, soft on top, as you can see, soft and springy. And we'll be able to dust off some of the flour from those. But we're going to give these a little bit of time just to cool down, and then we'll cut into one and take a look. And more television magic. These have cooled down now. They are really smelling fantastic. So we're going to slice into one, take a look. Look at that, I love all the flour falling off of this. But look at that inside, how light and fluffy and soft these are. Now I know you're going to love making these for yourself, so let me know how you get on my Facebook community group. Just look up The Low Carb Cook on Facebook. But while you're here, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon for notifications of when new videos get uploaded. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Low Carb Cook. Hey, thanks for watching The Low Carb Cook. If you enjoyed this episode, why not watch one of our playlists or this recommended video? Click on the logo below to subscribe. Join us on any of our social pages, or if you'd like to show a bit more love, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com using the link below. For even more great stuff, check out the website, thelowcarbcook.com.